Welcome to Let's Talk Elevators, where we hear from voices within the vertical transportation industry. I'm your host, Morgan Jones, and this show is sponsored by Hyperion Solutions, whose focus is to provide tailored solutions that elevate the customer experience. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Elevators. Today, our guest is Travis Hall from Alliance Elevator Solutions. Travis, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Morgan. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here. Travis, I happen to know you from before the episode, but for all of our listeners, I would love if you would share your origin story. Tell us how you came to be where you are today.
My partners and I started the company back in 2012. And the interesting side of this story is that I was actually working for one of my partners. So one of my partners is D.L. Martin Company, and they kind of pulled me into the industry working with the Schindler account. And I guess that was 2011, I started working with Schindler and started kind of getting introduced to the mindset of at least an OEM, and saw the product for the first time, got to experience riding on top of a car and trying to value engineer products. And I was, kind of a sales, but also a value engineer at the time. So my job was to work with not only Schindler, but other accounts and try to figure out how we could manufacture the product to specification, but just for a lesser of a cost. That was my role at DL Martin, and they had a variety of different industries they worked in, and industry and the elevators was one of them. So I was kind of playing around with different industries, kind of enjoying my time at DL Martin, and then Mr. Pete Meeks from Delaware Elevator. I'm sure you're familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, he rolled up to Mercersburg, Pennsylvania, where D.L. Martin was, and introduced this idea of a package, a hydraulic elevator package to compete with the multinationals. And Delaware needed a manufacturer for the sling and platform of the Group 1 equipment. I was put on kind of that assignment from deal. And I guess the rest is history. Delaware is just a phenomenal company to be a part of. And I didn't really know it at the time how large they were, because if you ever know, Steve is a very humble guy. And I'm just thinking it's a small elevator company in Salisbury, Maryland. And I go down there to see his team. I'm like, oh my, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
And then saw what his passion, what his vision was, and looking at the resources that he had, looking at the resources D.L. Martin had. They were close, but they weren't going to match. So they needed a kind of facilitator, a mediator in between the two to really provide the product that D.L. Martin could manufacture, and really provide the product that Delaware itself. So I went into my boss, the CEO of the company, a gentleman by the name of Dan Fisher, and I said, I got this crazy idea. I'm not sure if you're going to like it, but I do. And I want to resign from my current position. And I'm also going to ask you for some money to start another company with a guy that I just met, Pete Meeks. And I think we got something. I love the industry. I love him. I love his motivation and his passion. And I want to be a part of that in one way or another. And so I'm going to resign. I'm going to ask you for some money. And oh, by the way, I really would like you to be partners as well with Pete, and kind of kick this thing off. So that's how I got into it back in 2000. Really, it was like October of 2011. We didn't start the company until 2012. I know that's a huge backstory into this, but it's very unique. I think there's not too many people that have that, where I'm going to resign, but I also need money to start a company that I want you to be a part of. And I just,
For sure.
I think it's,
I love it.
unique.
I think that's a really fascinating story, and I love that you're kind of setting up the episode with what we're going to talk about, and how you thought outside the box and did some things maybe a little bit unconventional, and I love that so much. And I think that that's a really strong point as we talk about the next generation and elevator professionals. So, to get started, as we kind of talk about people who are thinking about getting into the elevator industry or want to learn more about it, and then how we're evolving as a group of people in the vertical transportation industry, what kind of skills are in demand right now across vertical transportation?
And I want to make sure I start off this Q&A with just an idea, that a concept that I can only give advice or my opinions on my side of the industry, which is, manufacturing, engineering, packaging, working with supply chain. Obviously, our customers are independent elevator contractors, and many of them have to work with field challenges. We don't necessarily see that side as much as maybe if you had an independent contractor or a business owner. I'm going to speak more on the business side more than the mechanical side today. There's a lot of, with the NAC, there's not only committee, but a club, if you will, called Next Gen. I think a lot of those next gen folks are business owners or the next generation, or maybe they're in sales and marketing on supply sides. They're kind of where I gravitate this type of Q&A to. But I think if you look at what is most important to help me get to where and then you capitalize on it, and I alluded to just problem solving. It's difficult to say it, just, hey, you got to be able to problem solve because there's so much. It's not a generational thing. What I've learned over the years, and this is going into 14 years of this company and about 20 years of manufacturing experience altogether, 22 years, is that and it's all based on the cloth you're cut from, I believe. I think that you have the ability deep down, there's people that have that ability to problem solve, and there's people that just don't see it. Now, you can get coached to seeing it to be a really good problem solver, though. I think it's something that you have from the time you're, say, 16 years old to the time move into retirement, is that you got to look at something and be able to say, how do I get from A to B here? And how can I help people do the same thing? It could be a manager trying to solve a problem. Maybe it's a mechanic trying to troubleshoot something if you're in that lane. But if you're a problem solver and you're able to prioritize how to get, how to get from where you're at right now to the solution, I think is very valuable right now.
I love that. And I like that you kind of just approach this whole thought process from a perspective of soft skills.
Yeah.
That somebody may not have a specific vocational training, or maybe they're not somebody who went the college path, but really it's intentionality about your way of thinking or how you approach things or what inherent capabilities that you have as a person to kind of put you on the right path from a career perspective.
Yeah, and I'm not one to be advocate, pro or against college, right? But I have a few years of college myself. My son's off to Virginia Tech. I'm studying to be an engineer, and I think there's value to those trades, and there's certain degrees that work better than others. But specifically in the elevator industry, there might be some people that have, like I said, that disagree with this, but I don't believe you need a college education. I think you got to have a willing to learn. You got to have an understanding of where you want to go and what financial goals that you have and what your work to life balance needs to be. But at the end of the day, if you have the right attitude, and I want to stress on that, I'm sure there's a couple other questions later on. I think attitude is so, so important. If I had to rank what, these people skills or soft skills, I call them peripheral skills. But if you have this need for, hey, I need to be able to problem solve, the next thing is I got to have the right attitude to problem solve with the current situation, either the employer that you're working for or the actual job that you're trying to fix or the project that you're on. I think that attitude is really, really important. But when it comes to, do you need a degree, not the degree? I'm leaning more towards not the degree to be successful. There's so many business owners in this industry that are doing very well for them and their families, and they don't have degrees.
Well, and I'll just give a bit of a testimonial myself. I'm one of those people in that camp. I never spent a day in college. I don't have a degree, but would consider myself to be pretty successful in what I've set out to do within the industry. And I'm on the corporate or business side of things. So where you might look at it from the perspective of a technician or somebody again who's technical or vocational, skipping the college path and doing something very hands-on. I'm a testament to the whole other side of the business where you could bring those skills, the ingenuity, thinking outside the box, enjoying the problem solving, and just having a hunger for learning to be on a path that doesn't require that.
Yeah, yeah, but you gotta back it up, and I always say this, there's always this, disclaimer or this, "but" or "however."
Yeah,
Yeah, but go back to, your accomplishments and many of my team's accomplishments or these business owners that own independent elevator contracting companies, is that they're very passionate and they work their butts off, right? So, understand that you might have to give a little bit more of your time, and
absolutely.
that's always a trade-off in your career. It's either time, right? So for those that went to school, they paid money. So they don't necessarily need to put in as much time. There's a lot of, disclaimers to that one too. But from a high level overview, understand that's the art of the war, right? You either your time or or money. And I think in many cases, when it comes to your career, if you don't go that path where you spend, 100,000, 150, $200,000 on education, understand that you're going to school of hard knocks. And what that means is you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to be a little better than the guy with that degree because there's a lot of times, on the red, I mean, people all the time, we got 3 or 4 jobs opening right now as we're expanding. And we want a 4-year degree. We do, it'd be nice to have. I can guarantee you this experience trumps a 4-year degree in this industry, at least working for me. But you got to know that I got to know that you have that experience. And how do you get that
Right.
experience? You work your tail off to get there. If you're somebody that, is, we'll say 30 years old and you have 8 years of experience working with an independent contractor, that is going to trump somebody that comes out of college with a 4-year business degree every single day in my company. Right. But you had to work for it. Nobody gave that to you. You worked for it.
Right. Totally relate. How do you think things like technology are shaping or evolving the way that we train?
I think for me, I'm going to use the word that's been, kind of in everybody's conversation over the last 6 months or a year, at least on the business ownership side, is AI. And yeah, I believe that artificial intelligence is going to replace people. That's the tough question. Depends, where and where is it relevant? Where is this conversation going? Is it somebody that potentially is in the warehouse where you have AI, sorting and being and distributing of product? Maybe. But in our industry and where we stand is that I think it's going to be people either learn how to work with AI, how to incorporate it into their day-to-day actions, when to use it, how to use it. How to use it is a really big deal. There's security measures that your company has to take in order for you to really use it in your day-to-day at your office or your business. But I think that it's going to be people that understand it and use it and people that don't. And if you don't use AI over the next couple of years on the business side of our industry, you will get replaced, not necessarily by AI, in my opinion, but with people that know how to use AI. Right. There's a difference there. Yeah. For the people that are in my inner circle, even my team members as well, as they understand, like, you got to stay up on this stuff, right? You got to read, you got to self-learn, you got to self-educate. And there is some really, really good authors, in my opinion, that, pick up a book by Jeff Woods. Jeff Woods wrote a fantastic book about the AI driven leader. And I want to tell you, that book is now got some age to it. It's about a year old. When you're talking AI, a year is a long time. It's like 10 years, right? In any other industry, especially our industry, because our industry is a little bit slow to adapt new technologies. But that's like I say a fundamental book, in my opinion, to start like your AI journey there. If you're somebody listening to this podcast and it's like, I don't even understand what you're talking about, Travis. What do you mean? How can AI help me? And I'm telling you, helping more so than just cleaning up an email, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
it's more than that. It's more than a grammar check, right? But at the end of the day is that it can be so, so useful as a strategic thought, like a thinker, a strategic thought processor. Like, they can be as a CEO to a CFO, a CFO to a CEO, kind of pregame before you go into that meeting of what a CEO mindset might think. If you're the CFO and you want to get ahead of some of those tough questions, you can actually use Chat GPT or Copilot or pick one, right? That can help you with that dialogue. So you're in a better position for an outcome that you're looking for. Say you want to persuade the CEO that has this path of, hey, I'm going to spend $500,000 on this new initiative. But at CFO, you have a tough time saying, hey, Mr. CEO, you don't have the money to do that. You might slowly roll down to 250. That's something I can get my head around. If you're the type of person that you want to pregame before that conversation, but you gotta know how to use the prompts, how to ask it the right questions. So I guess sometimes I get, you can see where my passions are. Technology, I have a passion for that right now. And, yeah, if you don't know how to use it, you're going to you're going to struggle over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's so relevant and so important that we, as an industry, like you said, who tend to fall back on the way things have always been done and a technology as a whole across the industry that isn't ever evolving and isn't changing. I think it's important to keep in mind the perspective that so many other career paths, so many other industries, people are constantly having to stay on top of what's trending. Take like a web developer as a for instance,
Oh
as
my. Yeah.
coding and things change so much, you have to be ever evolving. You have to be always willing to stay up to date with what's coming out and what's new. And I think we do have to internalize that across our industry and say we need to learn what's new. We need to think about modular elevators and things that are taking a new place in our industry and keep our minds open and our thoughts ahead of what's coming and how to use that technology.
Yeah, I think just to kind of piggyback off what you just said is that understanding what the customer is looking for out of your product is very important moving forward. Because what technology allows a company, especially an upstart or a company that has $1 million or $500,000 to peel off to really focus on a new initiative. There's technology right now as a way it can be data mined in a way that it can point you a very clear business plan, and all you need to do is execute it. So that AI that maybe even 2 years ago wasn't around, wasn't available, wasn't user friendly enough for a guy like me to use it to say, okay, if I got capex of, I don't know, $700,000. Where should I spend that money based on my company and my industry and my customer base? And if you use the right prompts, AI will guide you in a direction. I'm not saying go off the cliff with it, right? Because as AI and other technologies can bring back poor information, right? It can tell you, hey, you need to turn left when you really should be turning right. But going back to, you should be always be the person that is the expert. Don't just take the information coming back from a chat, process it, and move forward. Don't do that. You need to do a Q&A with, make sure it's right, make sure it didn't hallucinate. That's a thing with AI. Can actually, look it up. It's actually, they hallucinate by pulling back poor information. And that's what takes somebody that to understand what the goal is, going back to being that problem solver. You need to understand where you're going, and you got to know enough about your industry and your trade and your craft to make sure that you don't take your company down a path you shouldn't. So this idea that AI is going to replace all these strategic thinkers and all these visionaries and all these, absolutely not, because it takes years sometimes of understanding the industry you're in to ensure that the information coming out of, say, a business plan that was generated from chat is actually the business plan that makes sense for you.
I think that makes total sense. That's really insightful. What do you think, and you've talked about it a little bit in the soft skills, but what do you think really makes someone a good candidate for the elevator industry?
I think you gotta want it. I think that there's gotta be something in you that says, this is what I want for me and my family based on the goals I already set. It's not an industry, in my opinion, that you can just jump in and fake it. I have had podcasts in the past, and they've asked that kind of line of questioning. And because this industry is so technical, if you want to be good at selling something in this industry, say you want to work for a rope manufacturer, right? You're making wire rope, and you think you can come into this industry and sell off a pitch, like a slide deck. You're wrong. You need to understand how that rope is made. How is your material better than the next guy? Where's that material mined from? What's the supply chain? Who can you talk to that actually gets you those details that you need? Because your customer relies on your product to pay his mortgage. How important your products are. His reputation or her reputation is based on the products that he puts or she puts in that machine room or hoistway. So this isn't a B2B in some industries where you just put it on the shelf and another consumer picks it. And you know what, if it didn't work out, they'll go pick it, from supplier B or, retailer A. That's not how this works. They're so passionate about what they do because they have to be, because it's their company, right? So as a supply chain for that passionate individual, you got to be equally passionate. You got to be equally knowledgeable. And if you don't understand what you're saying or what you're doing, this is not the industry to fake it, because you'll get called out on. And as soon as you get called out and you lose that trust of your customer, you're out. Like it's so simple, but people make it so difficult. Like, just actually do what you say you're going to do. And when you don't know the answer, tell them straight up, I don't know that answer, but I will tomorrow. I'll be right back with that. Just simplicity, right? But I think it's just understanding that, going back to this question, and it's just that you got to know that this is an industry that you're going to have to, what we said earlier, you're going to have to put your time in. You're going to figure it out. You're going to, and by the way, if you think this industry gives you the perfect training program and you're wrong. A lot of times you are just fed to the fire and you're gonna sink or swim. And it doesn't matter if you pop from all these are a lot of these are small companies, right? Or companies that got acquired by a larger VC or some sort of private equity. Do you think they got training programs for you? No, they don't. So if there's this is not an industry where it's soft where you can like, well, I just didn't know because I wasn't taught. Guess what, man? You're gonna be knocking on the door trying to get back in because they'll kick you out. Yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't cut it.
it doesn't cut it.
I think, to your point, you have to think of, let's take somebody coming in on the supplier side, and let's say that you're that person who's going to sell ropes, like in your example. Your company who specializes in ropes maybe can teach and train you and give you lots of information about ropes. But again, to your point, to be the best that you could be and to really maximize your potential in the industry, you have to go further beyond that to understand all the external factors or other things that influence your ropes.
Yeah.
You've got to understand shivs and traction as a whole and how
Excellent.
all of those things impact
Excellent.
your product.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed. This is an industry that I'm put sell in quotations. You sell through
Yeah.
education, right? Like as a supplier, you're educating that customer, right? And you think of all the educators in your life. I don't care if it's a coach, if you played sports in high school or college. I don't care if it's a mentor in your first, career position, or maybe it was a professor or teacher through academia. Like understand that they educated you, and that's no different than how you need to educate your customer because that customer wants to learn because again, he or she has the name of his or her company on their shoulder or on their chest. And I tell you, that means a lot to them.
How do you recruit diverse talent into the industry? And what kind of things do you portray or explain about us as an industry to someone who's not from it, doesn't know it?
I think it depends. I think when the company was, five, $10 million, I think you can recruit through a family of friends and a family of, the network, the inner circle you might have from coaching baseball or coaching soccer. And you see somebody that, hey, looks kind of after grabbing a beer with him or her, you're like, oh, why don't you come onto this team and we're growing and you sell them that entrepreneur type of, what if this was like this? And what if you could make your own hours? And then all of a sudden you kind of like that work balance life comes into play and you're like, hey, that makes a lot of sense. I want to do that because the entrepreneur, the person that is starting the company has that much passion. People want to be connected to people with passion, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so that works when the company's small and you got maybe, I don't know, maybe you got a handful, maybe you got 10 or 12 employees. And if you would have asked me 7 or 8 years ago, I'd be, that's all you really need. But as you grow, as your company needs things that doesn't just come up at the baseball game, HR, accounting,
Mhm. Sure.
marketing, all these peripheral types of departments or responsibilities that take a special type of person or experience or education, say it's engineering, you have to expand. And I think that, I can tell you this, we're not great at it. There's people that come in and leave our company because we are a very fast paced, aggressive company. I'm a pretty aggressive leader. I think that if we're not, growing by 25, 30% year over year, we're doing something wrong. And I think that not everybody, even though they say they want to be a part of a growing company, and you tell them like, people that interview with me, I try to scare the crap out of them. Like, hey, this is not the right company for you. If you're not willing to do X, Y, Z, if you're not willing to sweat it out a little bit, take chances, back your story. Like if it, like some of the stuff that is required, right, to be part of my company is not everybody's cup of tea. And so we give them a 90-day probation period. So I kind of, that's where I'm going with this conversation. I think you got to you want to test drive a car before you buy it. I think that you got to, if you're a company, you got to have some sort of probation period where they need to get through 90 days, 30 days. You pick based on what you're trying to do and who the person is, position, I should say. But at the end of the day, test them out. Make sure it's a fit for both the company and the candidate. Just don't throw somebody, offer them, 100 grand, full benefits, 4 weeks vacation, and expect that it's going to work because even though that's what they say they want, that's not what they want. They want to be happy. And it takes them experiencing your culture to understand if they can even be happy at your company. And because I can tell you firsthand, there's a lot of people that were not happy with my company because they just weren't they couldn't stay up with us. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like, it's just not who they were and what they're comfortable with. It takes all kinds of different people to fit in the company, but not everybody has to understand that culture and that speed. I think maybe that's what I'll leave this answer with, is that they have to understand the culture of the company, the attitude of the company. That's so important. That's so much more important than if they can be a good project manager or a good salesperson.
Sure. And a takeaway from the leadership perspective that you've got to be responsible for laying out those expectations on the front end and saying, this is how we operate as a company. These are the types of things that we're looking for in candidates. These are the accountability measures that you'll be held to, and all of those things, so that we're trying our best to educate people before they get into the industry, before they come to our companies, on how they can be the most successful long term. So, thinking again about technology, and we talked a little bit about AI specifically, but in a broader sense, what kind of technology do you feel like is important for us as an industry, or for people who are coming in and expecting to grow with us?
Yeah, I think that there's so much out there, and we'll just say from the trade side, all right, even from my supply chain, my growing supply chain. 5, 6 years ago, my supply chain was U.S. based. Now it's global, and because it's a global supply chain, there is different technologies coming in from Asia and Europe that technicians just need to get on board with if they want this industry to continue to grow, or if they want your company to be competitive. It could be a
Mhm,
door operator, it could be fixtures, it could be like, at the end of the day, there's been so many great companies that built great brands inside the United States. But at the end of the day, they got to stay competitive. And like, from a door operator, like I said, fixtures to a machine to a hydraulic pump. I mean, you pick one. Over the last, I would say, since we came out of COVID, the global market is real again. And I think that, especially if there's talk of the EN81 and the ASM 17.1 coming together, or having version of a kind of a melting pot of the two, like,
mhm.
I think that the technicians as well as the suppliers really need to look at new technologies, new innovations that their potential global counterpart have, and figure out how they can do it here.
And what about on the technician side of things, stuff like more augmented reality type of training, and things that are gonna push us beyond the traditional, like, textbook learning?
Yeah, I'm always a fan of hands-on. I'm not 100% sold on like 3D reality training yet. I think it's a lot better than it used to be. But the reality is that's just a way to do training with saving some cost. So if it's kind of like me. I've been trying to sail, and I practice sailing, right? I have a software program on my computer that I get to fake sail, right? And
Okay.
it's good for concepts, right? And it's good for ideas, understand wind directions, plotting courses, but there's nothing like sailing a damn boat, right? So you
Mhm.
need to get on the water and get that real sense of what that boat is telling you and what you need to do to kind of, again, go and reach the goal that you have. And I think that when it comes to training in the elevator industry, I would use those software systems or 3D, like that. I think that get the concept right, but there's nothing better than hands-on training inside a training facility. I don't care if it's union, non-union, with a good instructor. I think that the NAC is doing a fantastic job with some of their programs. But I also believe that when it comes to the suppliers, the controller companies specifically, I know there's a company too. There's a couple companies out there that are helping technicians and building owners figure out what's wrong with the elevator. So troubleshooting could be much, much quicker to get from A to B. I think this industry and many industries, because unfortunately, as we are acquired by, private equity, the first thing that they chop when the numbers aren't right at the end of the quarter is training, because this is this indirect long-term value. And they don't know, private equity has they can't tell you if they're going to have a company in 3 years or not. They might flip it and sell it. So what they don't want to do is spend all this money on training when that is is keeping them from reaching their profit numbers for the quarter, right? And independent contractors are no different too. Is that they're trying to pay overhead, they're trying to make sure that payroll is being taken care of, their suppliers are paid on time. So, so there's challenges with training, and I think that it takes outside associations to look at this challenge in this industry and create programs that help troubleshoot, to help the mechanic, to help ultimately this industry kind of keep moving forward. But I think the controller companies and these companies like Liftcom and others that can help the technician find out what's wrong with the elevator can actually simplify his or her job and get that elevator up and going.
I love the sailing example. I think that's really helpful to kind of draw context of the importance of understanding the fundamentals, but knowing that there's just nothing like having the hands-on experience or getting a feel for it and understanding, you're feeling a vibration from this point and tracing that back and root causing it and that kind of stuff. And I think also to your point, it's important to realize the burden that's on any company, whether it's private equity or independent contractors, whatever the case, of how heavy a lift that is and how we talked about before, it's ever evolving and it really kind of has to be constant. And I think then in turn, it's really important that we boost and invest and support all of those other opportunities like the next gen education conferences and the VTMP programs with NAEC and CET accreditations and all the different places where we collectively as an industry can invest in resources and opportunities for those people to need it.
Yeah, one thing always in my mind has been kind of the thing I've been doing, hopefully, is trying most of my career is you pay forward, right? So even the NAC, right? I don't know what the membership fee is now, and I don't know how much that training course is, but all I'm saying is that if at some point you think you're going to need training in your company and you think the idea or concept of NAC is good, invest in them now. Because at the end of the day, you want to build those relationships. You want to get an understanding the lay of the land, if you will, figure out how it really works. And then when your company is at a point where it needs training, you've kind of greased the rails to a point that it's a much smoother transaction. Because if you don't do that and like you're like, oh my, I need training right now, where do I start? You're kind of like a deer in the headlight at that point, and you're already behind the curve. And your people are going to sense that. Your customers are going to sense that. So pay forward and get involved in NAC as soon as you can, so that you get basically ready and prepared for pulling that trigger when that training is absolutely critical to keep expanding your business.
How do you encourage that continuous learning mindset after people maybe get some certification or they reach a milestone? How do you foster that?
To answer that in two ways. One, set the next goal. If you accomplish the goal, set the next one. Keep moving forward. Right. And then once you set those goals, make sure you educate yourself. Self education is so important. You should be, if you're not reading a book every month, you're in trouble because somebody that's competing against you is. I had a mentor of mine way back when I was probably like, right when I came out of the military, probably 23 or 24 years old. His name was Travis Myers. Travis Myers said, hey, you got a lot of time on the road, son. You need this thing called Audible. And from that point on, I started, and at that time, it was like the CDs you put in. I'm old dude.
Yeah.
There was no downloading anything. It was a CD that you put in a CD player. And back then I had to make sure I had a rental car that had a CD player in it so I could put a CD in it as I was traveling in that city. I was a parts salesman, believe it or not, for JLG. And that's like, I started that habit based on his recommendations 25 years ago. And I have continued that habit throughout my entire life with some small breaks in between. So I think for me is set the next goal, keep moving forward. It's okay to have a me day, right? Have a celebration of reaching that goal. And because it's, you got to, sometimes you got to put the vehicle neutral and coast just to figure out, okay, where am I going next? Because you just don't want to keep accelerating down the wrong path if you haven't set your goal yet. So put the thing in neutral, park if you want, and then figure out where you want to go and then move forward, right? And then you get that, yeah, I'm kind of nerdy when it comes to, then I set a series of books to help me reach that goal. That's how I learned about EOS and how to run a company through that whole mindset, which it was life changing. It was just learning about how EOS worked. I'm kind of off in a rabbit hole here. I apologize, but you talk about like real world events that you pick up through habits that you have accumulated, if you will, over time. I would have never picked up EOS if I didn't have that habit of Audible and trying to knock out a book every month.
Yeah, I think that's another great takeaway is intentionality. You have to be intentional about investing in yourself. You have
Well
to be
said.
intentional about continuing to learn. You have to be intentional about staying up in technology. So many things are a mindset. Remembering that there's going to be somebody else, like you said, who's going to be reading those books and going to be kind of competing against you or gunning for the same opportunity or on the same path, and what are you doing to set yourself apart or rising to the challenge? I think that's important.
Yeah, I had a good friend of mine. He's actually a consultant for EOS, and he put me down a path of this book called "The Hard Thing About Hard Things." And I don't know the author, but look it up. It's but one of there's a lot of kind of good one liners in there from this author, and one thing that resonated with me, one of the lines that he wrote was that people remember you based on what you do, not how you feel. And I think that is a challenge now that people feel certain ways. And almost we're in the society of that's okay to feel the way you want to feel. And I'm not debating that one way or another, but in business, if you're trying to reach a goal and you're trying to position yourself in a path to reach that goal, just remember you are holding yourself accountable for what you do, not how you feel. Nobody cares how you feel except your therapist and your loved ones. And when it comes to business, they don't care. They want you to do something. And you as an individual need to do something, not feel something. Does that make
You're
sense?
right. It does. I love that. I think that's impactful. How do you think our companies in the industry can best support growth for field employees?
You think it's challenging because you have the union that plays such a big card, literally,
Hmm.
in this kind of answer. But I think what happens is people start working for the industry, not for the company that employs them, that I see, because
Hmm.
you have like it's almost like two different companies in some industries. You have these people that basically feel that the company or the office doesn't listen to them. They don't understand what they really need. They need a jacket. They won't give them a jacket. Understand the jacket they probably want is $300 and the office is going to give you one for $50 from Walmart or something. And it's not
Hmm.
jiving. Right. But at the end of the day is I feel that I feel like building or industry needs to listen to the field more and understand what's really important to them. Now, there's always this surface of what's important to somebody. People are always going to say pay. People are always going to say, work life balance. People are going to say working conditions. But I think most of the time, what's really driving that is that they need somebody to hear them and they need to know that there's a plan for them. There's so many people that you could satisfy with less pay and more hours if you just tell them that you got a plan for them. And this is the plan. Do they agree on the plan? Because these people, they're mechanically inclined. They like to, they want to know that step A goes to B and B goes to C, C goes to D, and they get to a goal, right? Like that's troubleshooting, right? A, B, C. So at the end of the day, I think making sure that the office communicates with their field, that they have a plan for that individual, and this is how they're going to get to. Now that plan is going to be a balance of, what he or she wants in the field, comparatively speaking, what the office wants out of that mechanic. But see, you have that conversation right up front. So there's a map. And as long as they know that there's going to be some pushing and shoving along the way, it's not going to be a perfect utopia, that there's going to be some communication necessary to keep that plan on track. I think you can keep people, you can keep them involved, keep them encouraged, keep them going to don't make, and oh, by the way, don't make team building mandatory. Don't ever do that, right? You want to piss off a mechanic? Tell them they
Yeah.
have to be somewhere Friday afternoon for team building. They're gonna flip out, right? But people do that because they don't know any different. So just understand that most people want to do a better job. They'll do it for what they're getting paid right now, no matter what they're telling you. But you just got to make sure you have a plan to reach a goal that they have. And I think that would be my recommendation, my 2 cents there.
Yeah, that makes me think just on the importance of giving people the why behind doing anything versus just, "Here's what we're gonna do," because when they have that understanding of why we're doing it, why we're on this path, why we need this outcome, then your chances of getting their buy-in are so much higher.
Yeah, I think too, it's a really slippery slope when you communicate the why. Um, I can again, my own experiences. Times, even recently, I communicated why we're doing so, but because there was a need to do that. But unfortunately, the why hasn't been all the detail hasn't been figured out how we're going to get to the why. Like the why is we're doing. Say we're going to we're in 3 years. I'm going to make some up. We're going to double the company, right? And we're doing that because I want to create opportunity for not only my customer base and industry, but also for my team members. If you come in as a draftsman, I want to have a spot for you as a lead design engineer someday. But in order to do that, I got to double the company. That's the why, right? Now, what's going to happen if you don't have that why figured out in that plan that I just talked about? You're going to have 35 people being like, dude, how do I fit in the why? What's my job? What do I do next? How do I get to that design engineer that you talked about? And I did that just this past week. So I can tell you, don't communicate the why too quickly until you've really figured out how to use those people in that direction. Conceptually is okay, but that second or third follow up bullet point to why we're doing the why, unless that's been vetted out with all the decision makers, kind of keep that in the back pocket. But I think, yeah, the it's not, again, I'm not saying generational thing. I'm saying that the people in today's workforce needs to know the why. There is so much outside of the industry now that they're getting literally influenced by that tells them the why, right? Let's just go with that. Where the influencers out there are saying, "Hey, this is why you should buy this. This is why you should go here." So they're getting the why in their day to day. So they need the why at the workplace too. It's just a psychology thing, right? So at the end of the day, as a owner or as a manager, as a VP, you need to tell your workforce the why because they need it nowadays. They expect it. Different than 5 years ago. Definitely different than 10 years ago.
That's a very interesting context. I think that makes a lot of sense. Relatable. What skills do you think elevator professionals need now that differ from the past?
Yeah, I'll break it down again. I'm not going to talk about the mechanics right now. I'm going to talk about the more let's say white collar positions, for lack of words, inside the industry. I think that you have to be more open, more of a chameleon, more of an understanding of different strokes for different folks, because it is becoming more of a global industry, right? The multinational has been working globally for years, and I think you need to understand as an independent elevator contractor that buying a GAL MOVFR door operator isn't going to work for all applications moving forward. Really, really good door operator, sell a lot of them, but maybe that's not the application for all elevator packages moving forward because the industry has shifted to maybe a more inexpensive linear belt. Maybe it's more predictable. Maybe it's easier to work on. Whatever the maybe is, we're not here to debate that, but it is different now. And I think that you need to understand and open yourself up to these new technologies and open yourself up to these new suppliers or even different ways of being trained. You talked about have a little bit more 3D reality or maybe software, or, maybe it's something that you're not familiar with, but that's okay. Okay. Because the industry and technology and people are shifting inside the industry. I think to give you, I guess, a very simplistic answer to that, Morgan, would be just be open to new things. Don't have that old school mentality that my way was the right way. Because a lot of this is generational, right? Grandfather started the company, the father has the company. The grandson of the owner is now potentially on deck to run the company, maybe part of next gen, trying to learn some of these soft skills. And I think you just need to make sure you stay open to what the possibilities are and be wise enough to make solid decisions for either the team that you manage or the customers that look to you for education or for knowledge. And then obviously for the greater company that you're a part of.
Yeah, I think that's really important to look at that from kind of a couple of ways. Number one, as the next gen person, as somebody trying to grow in the industry, to be somebody who's gonna be thought provoking, who's gonna have ideas, who's gonna try to problem solve and be in a place where you are willing to communicate those and try to make change. But then also a lesson for the people already in the industry, already doing the jobs, already knowing the things, to be open to all of that, to say, yes, maybe I have done it all this way or through this software or with this tool for all this time, but potentially there's a better way or that's something that we can explore. And then, furthermore, from a leadership perspective, giving a channel or a venue for those types of ideas and thoughts to be communicated. Because
Excellent. Yeah.
I can just imagine some young eager, curious person paired with somebody more senior and experienced and saying, "What about this?" or "Why don't we try this?" And that more senior person saying, "Well, this is the way that we do it." And without some kind of mechanism to let those ideas float, they could just die right there.
Yeah. So I give you this is just, we'll see how you take it and how your listeners take it. But and I don't know where I read this or where I listened to this one, but before you enter my office on my door, as I have a series of questions, and it says, "What is your name? What is your problem? What are your top three solutions to that problem? Give me one of those solutions and come on in." So do that because I want them to answer a question that they know, which is their name. Two, I want them to think through the top three solutions before they even get to that door. Because that's unfortunately, I don't have as much time as I would want in a day. I trust them that they're going to bring me the best solution. Now, if we start debating that solution, they can then fall back to number two and number three, but they're prepared themselves to talk about that. So I trust my people to bring problems to me, but I also trust my people to come up with a solution. Because if I'm doing say my coder or my IT or my project coordinator or if my inside sales, if I'm doing their jobs for them, I'm not doing my job. And we all have to do our jobs for the company. We all got those responsibilities. Not saying that we can't assist in helping that somebody based on our experiences that we have, right? But I can't be doing the job of my inside sales or project manager. They need to do their own jobs.
I think that's another really great takeaway. I think human nature is gonna fall back on, "I got a problem, tell me what to do," and being intentional, again, like you said, with having those types of expectations or that communication plan. "I'm gonna need you to think through this yourself, to work through these steps to come up with this content before you come and you ask for help or direction." I think that's a great lesson.
Yeah, it goes back to being a problem solver, right? Yeah, I think we opened this dialogue with what I thought was one of the most important traits to have, in the workforce or in the workforce is just being a problem solver. And I think that maybe more on a generational side. This is the first time I dip my toes into that water. Is that they're looking for somebody to give them the solution instead of coming up with the actual solution themselves, because if you use social media as an example or a conduit for information or like that, there are so many answers given. This is what you should buy. This is where you should go. This is how you should think. If you're in this, political party, this is how you need to think. It's like they're being told all the time what they should do. And in our industry and in the workplace, there's times where like, you need to do it yourself. You need to figure it out. And I think it's even challenging sometimes for parents to do that with kids. Maybe that's how it started. Like that was I'm 47. I'm an old guy. So my parents like, hey, go outside and figure it out. You want it, figure it out. Right? I'm not telling you how to build a tree fort. You figure it out. You fall or you put the nail through your hit the hammer on your thumb. You're not gonna do that again, are
But
you?
you won't do it again.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, but then as a parent, I'm like, I took that pretty bad fall building that tree house. So maybe I'm going to help my kids build a tree house, right? And I think unknowing to us, parents in I say 40s and late 30s, is that we gave our children a lot of answers because we didn't want those children to go through the same pitfalls as we did, right? But maybe our parents were onto something back then. They didn't know they were onto something. Let's just say that. But they taught us how to figure things out. And I think maybe this, as a parent, I have an 18-year-old, and I can guarantee you, though very smart kid, Virginia Tech and engineer, he struggles figuring some of the most basic things out. And I'm like, come on, bro. You got to be better. And love him to death. And great kid. But we've had that conversation.
Relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think we can attract more talent into the industry as a whole?
I think it's really basic. Just show them how much we make. I mean, at the end of the day, look at a mechanic. Say somebody has a passion to be an auto mechanic, right? And tell them, like, this is what you make as an auto mechanic, working at Midas or the pro shop, auto shop at the turn, maybe the dealership. You go all in, go to the dealership, right? But then show them what you can make as an elevator mechanic. Now, I know you're not working on a hot rod, right? And you're working on something that goes up and down for a living. If you like working on a car, it's not too far of a stretch to say you might not mind it in the hoist way, especially if you're an adjuster troubleshooting. And oh, by the way, the hot rod that you're working on over here that's somebody else's, you can actually buy yourself and work in your own garage because you can afford both if you do it right. So I think that just presenting the folks what the compensation can be, the barrier to entry is really low. And most independents, even OEMs, will pay for their training, their apprenticeship program, right? You can negotiate that part of the deal a lot of times. And then all you got to do is work for them for a few years. And then if that's not exactly where you want to camp out for your career, guess what? You got this thing called a card that you can go anywhere with. You got this license you can go anywhere with. I mean, you can literally go from, you know what, New York City is not my place. I'm going out to LA, right? I need more sun. You can do that in this industry. Yeah, there's some things you're going to need to do in the state of California, the state of Montana or whatever to make sure that you're licensed and certified. But at the end of the day, 95% of the heavy lifting is done no matter where you go. So I think that you have this opportunity to make a good living for you and your family. You have an opportunity to pick up and go wherever you want to go because there's mechanics needed everywhere. I came from the construction side. So I worked for companies like JLG and Volvo Construction. I know how much road crew work makes. I know how much a labor putting in glass or a guy erecting steel makes. They got nothing on the elevator industry. Nothing.
Do you find that there are any industries that are good to pull from as resources for this industry?
Yeah, I'd go right after the trade schools. I mean, I'm got a little inside baseball here. If I had an independent contracting company and I needed people, I'd go camp out at any trade school, right? Job fairs, trade school. Tell them everything I just said, put that in a pitch, know that pitch, bring them on board, take them to lunch, maybe dinner, buy them a beer if you have to, if they're 21, and then get them, drinking the Kool-Aid because that's where the generation is. See, understand that this generation come out of trade schools are the smartest people that we know, right? Now, they're not the wisest yet, but they're from a demographic side, they are the smartest people that this country has ever produced, right? So at the end of the day, you take those smart kids, you drink Kool-Aid where they're passionate about something, and you feed them with experience that make them wise, they're going to be unstoppable, right? But you got to get them early. That's where I would do the community colleges, the trade schools, anybody like connected. I have no shame going to a job site, guy framing a job. Hey, you want to make more money? You want to be warmer than you are right now? I got a job for you. I'll teach you. I'll educate you. And if you don't like me in 3 to 4 years, peace out, no harm feelings. Take it and go someplace else with it. I mean,
Growth opportunity.
yeah. I mean, this isn't rocket science stuff, man. This is called construction. This is a blue collar industry. And if you know how blue collar guys think, because I was one of them, right? I am one of them. We're simple folk. We are very simple people. You figure out how to take care of us and pay us a couple bucks more and make sure our fingers aren't cold going to work. We're coming your way.
I like that. Well, Travis, I appreciate all the insights that you shared with me. Is there any kind of last takeaway you would want to share?
I think, I was thinking about this on my way over today. I think like one of the last things that I would leave this podcast with is just understand passion. there's people that have approached me and talk, I'm really passionate to work for your company. It's kind of like using like for me, I love you without saying I love, without knowing that if you really love me or not. You're saying it way too early, right? Like don't say you're passionate about something until you're really committed to it, because being passionate means you're all in. You're giving something up so you can spend more time being passionate in whatever it is. So if you're passionate about your career, and I had a team member say, I'm passionate about my career, but you don't want to work more than 40 hours, bro, man. How can you be passionate about something if you want to overtime at 40 hours? That's not passion. Like, you got to understand what passion means. Passion has a lot, there's a imbalance there of time. If you're passionate about something, you want to spend every minute. I'm not saying actually physically doing it, but thinking about it, getting creative about it. How can I be better tomorrow than I am today? And what I'm passionate about? Have I communicated my passion to the people around me, my loved ones? Because they need to know, because if you don't, they're going to be gone. Because take it from me, that happened, right? You need to focus on, if you're really passionate, you got to be focused, but everybody around you needs to know what's going on. So I think be careful to use that word, I'm passionate about something, before you truly understand the sacrifice it takes to be passionate. I think that's what I would like to leave your listeners with. It's important to me.
I love that. I think it's a good one. Good takeaway. Well, thanks again, Travis. I loved everything that you shared with us, and I'm excited for everybody to hear it. Hi, thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Elevators. If you enjoyed the conversation, subscribe and leave us a review. If you have questions or ideas for a future episode, connect with us at letstalkelevators.com. Until next time, stay safe and keep moving up.